Welcome to Behind the Book. It's time now for Behind the Book, hosted by Tess Thompson and Karen McQuestion, two authors with a passion for books, no filters, and limitless curiosity. Join them now to find out the real story behind your favorite books and authors. And now, Behind the Book.
Welcome to another episode of Behind the Book. Here I am with Karen, my wonderful co-host, who is newly returned from the big city. How was your trip to New York?
We had a fabulous time. We went with my husband, Greg, and our daughter, our grown-up daughter, Maria, and who was just so much fun to be with and kind of invaluable because she's a lot smarter than her parents. And she also already had the Uber and Lyft app on her phone, and we don't because we're always home. So we flew in and we on a Friday earlier in the day, and we left later on Sunday. So it was really just a weekend, but we packed in so much. We went to 2 shows, we went out to eat, we went to Times Square, and for those who are worried, we kept our masks on almost continuously, and everywhere we went, every restaurant, every theater, they required proof of vaccination and a photo ID. And
Nice.
I did see them turn people away at restaurants that didn't have it. They were being really careful. Of course, there's always a risk when you leave your house, but I got an email that said, if you want to see Jeff Daniels in To Kill a Mockingbird, he's only going to be there for a few more weeks. And I don't even know how they got my email address, but it was the right thing at the right time because I thought, I do want to see Jeff Daniels in To Kill a Mockingbird. And then we just threw this trip together and we went. So I'm really glad we did.
That's fun. Well, speaking of podcasts, I just heard him interviewed on Smartless. And he talked about his role, which of course I'm so out of it. I didn't even realize that he was doing it. So when I saw that you were going, I thought, oh, how fun. I'm jealous now. So that's great.
Oh, he was so good. And he's one of my favorite actors. And then also, I'm from Wisconsin and he's from Michigan. So I feel that Midwestern connection.
Yeah, and he still lives in Michigan. He talked about that on the podcast that I listened to. So that's fun.
Oh, I'll have to listen to that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you should. He was wonderful.
I was going to tell you what I noticed today when I was online. It's that you are going crazy in Italy. Tess Thompson, and in your Italian versions of your Emerson past books. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk to our listeners about how that works, because traditionally, with traditional publishing, your agent would talk to a foreign rights agent who would contact publishers in other countries, who would then take on your book and hire translators and distribute it themselves. But what indie authors are now doing, many of them, several I know, we're making it happen on our own. So if you would just explain how that came to be, I think there are a lot of people who would be fascinated.
Yeah, so it's been kind of on my list of things to tackle, in the next couple of years, but it's quite expensive to have a good translator take a full length. My novels are long, so it's the more words, the more money. But a wonderful translator named Isabella Nanni reached out to me sometime last year, and asked if I was interested. She'd been doing another romance author who also writes historical, and said that she was doing well. So I decided just to take the plunge and sort of see how the schoolmistress would do over there. And 70% of Italian readers read on Kindle and in KU, Kindle Unlimited. So that has been kind of a new experience for me because I usually sell wide, but we put it out there and she was able to get it in the hands of some bloggers before it was released. So we got some good buzz and it's been doing really well. So I've now contracted to do the rest of the series with her. The Spinster will come out on January 20th in Italian. So I'm excited for that to just kind of keep the momentum going. And we'll just see how it goes from there.
So it's in Kindle. Is it also going to be in paperback in Italian?
It is already in paperback.
Oh, it is?
Yes. And I wasn't sure that we would sell any copies, but we have. So again, my translator recommended that I do that. She said, it's nice just to have it available. Don't expect to sell any, but it's been doing well. So I'm very, very pleased.
And you were able to keep your same covers.
Yes, with the titles changed, of course. And that was something I wasn't sure of, but I thought, well, these covers are so beautiful and they've done so well over here. I'll try them. And if, things are a flop, we might switch them out, but they've turned out to work out great. So that series has just been interesting because our interview today, Heather Huffman, she talks about writing a series for herself and, not expecting it to do well. And I've talked about it before on here, that Emerson Pass Historicals was that for me. It was just sort of that novel I wanted to write, or the first one anyway, the one I wanted to write for myself. And I saw, how Facebook gives you the reminder emails from several years ago or whatever. And I had a post that had said something like, I'm writing a book just for myself as a Christmas present. And then this series has just taken off. So it's been super exciting. We're also doing some French translations and some German for that same series that will come out this year as well.
I'm a big believer in passion projects. If you're excited about the story, I think it's probably most likely that readers will love it too.
Yeah.
I'm really delighted. I actually was kind of stalking the first book in Italian on the Amazon Italy site, and it was in like the top 5 or something, right?
Yeah.
And it hung into the top 100 for a long time. I'm like, oh my God, Tess is like
Yeah.
just taken off there. That's so exciting.
It is exciting. Well, especially because I love Italy and I can't wait to go back and visit. I went
Oh,
there.
you've been?
It's been
Ah,
15 to 20 years ago. I went for my one of my best friend's weddings, but I'm hoping that I will be able to make a case to myself and my husband that we need to go for a book signing over there. I signed up for one that's coming up just because it'd be a great excuse to go over again and meet all my Italian readers,
that would be so cool. Well, a few years ago, I have some books that are translated into German that I did the same thing. I became my own German publisher, hired a translator, and had it edited and formatted and distributed. And I had lunch with a literary agent when we were in New York. I did not work with this person, but thought I might, and I ultimately didn't. And I mentioned these German books, and she said, I could tell she wasn't quite fathoming what I was telling her, because she said, well, if you sell to a publisher, they pay for the translation. Like I didn't understand this. And I was like, oh no, I know. But I thought, but they also keep the majority of the profit. And this way, I know when I translated the German books, like 6 or 8 months in or whatever, when I'd go, okay, now it's paid for. Everything else is a revenue stream. And also I've broadened my reach to another market, to other readers, which is just wonderful.
Yeah. Well, and it's, Cliff and I talk about this a lot because we were just deciding, okay, do we want to do this? Because it's a huge investment. And especially when you have series like I do. But again, my work on it is done. So it's just another way to, have passive income. So it's definitely been a positive experience, but it did make me sweat when I when I signed the contract because it's a serious amount of money.
Well, I know the German books, we're talking thousands of dollars, because
Yes.
it's painstaking work translating. And if you have a good translator, they keep the tone and of what you're trying to convey. And you're also trusting them to not put anything in that would be objectionable or not true to your vision. So they're professionals, they need to be compensated. But when it works out great, like in your case, it's just fabulous.
Heather Huffman is a multi-genre author with publications in cozy mysteries, romance, and women's fiction. Quirky, optimistic, and a bit of a wanderer, Huffman cares deeply about causes pertaining to social justice and women's issues and has spent the past decade working with various charities that fight poverty, empower women, and fight human trafficking. Obviously a much better person than me. At the center of her world are her 3 grown sons, her Australian shepherd, and a spoiled puppy she shares entirely too many pictures of. Not true. I love seeing pictures of that sweet puppy. Welcome, Heather. It's so good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So tell us about your path to publication. I know you've been published for a long time and have had a long career. Did you always want to be a novelist?
No, because I wanted a job where I thought I could make money. That was what was instilled in me growing up. The first thing I wrote was that I shared publicly was way back in 4th grade. I entered a writing contest and came in dead last and decided that maybe writing wasn't for me, but I couldn't stop writing. So I just I would write myself I would write stories and keep them in notebooks, and they started piling up in the closet. And then eventually in high school, my English teacher made me read something in front of the class, which was excruciating. And then after I finished, I still remember the kid, his name was Bobby, stood up and was like, "You should be a writer." I was like, well, my dad thinks I should go into. So I tried other careers. I got my degree in corporate communication and marketing, but it just wouldn't go away, the desire to write. And so when I was 31, I remember thinking, this is it. I'm a grown-up. Is this really what I want to be doing with my life? And so I got very serious about getting published. I had 4 novels that were written at the time, started talking to agents and getting feedback. And I remember sharing one of my books, Jailbird, with the president of a really prominent literary agency. And she sat down with me. We had a face-to-face meeting, and she's like, "I love your writing." And I just, glorious second right there. And then she goes, "But I can't sell it." So she's like, "I can give you an amazing career if you will write to this formula, if you will write to genre." And so I went home and I cried a lot. And I finally decided, this is the story I want to tell. These, my throwaway series, the first 12 novels that I had published, they're all very unlikely heroines. They come from all different walks of life. My main character in Throwaway is a prostitute. My main character in Jailbird is an escaped convict. So I get where she was coming from, that they were not likely romance novel heroines, but their stories were the ones I wanted to tell. And so I decided to just release them. I'm like, if nobody's going to buy them, I'll just give them away. So I released them as ebooks for free, and they went crazy. I mean, they started getting like tens of thousands of downloads, and I was getting emails from all over the world from people who were former slaves who said they didn't realize anybody was aware of their plight. And, they were telling me what the books meant to them. From children who'd aged out of the foster system started reaching out to me. And while the books were going crazy, those first 4 novels that I had set out for free, my middle son was in a horrific accident. He's okay now, but at the time, they were telling us he wouldn't be. He was in a coma. He had to relearn everything. So I forgot about the books. I quit my corporate job, and I focused on being with him as he was healing. And that's when I got an email from a mid-sized publisher out of Seattle saying, "We like your books. We'd like to republish them under our banner. And do you have anything else?" And so after realizing they actually weren't a scam, that they were a legitimate publisher, I republished with them. My 5th book came out with them later that year. And the rest is history. I've been writing ever since. And that's been about, 10 years.
I love that your main characters are sort of disadvantaged. I think there's definitely readers that love that. I know I do.
Especially in that first series. I mean, and they were from all walks of life. I had some characters that were, millionaires who had these great lives, but there's something broken in all of them. That's why the series is called The Throwaways. Now, my characters now, and some of the books I'm writing now, are more conventional. Maybe. I mean, it's still me, so they're still going to be a little bit weird.
But I understand you recently made a shift from romance to mystery. How did that come about?
If I'm going to be just brutally honest, my love life is not so great. I'm just not very good at that whole romance thing. I love love. I love love stories. But it got to a point in my life where I realized, writing books that are so heavily focused on an area of my life that is so lacking is probably not the healthiest choice I could be making right now. So I just made a conscious decision to shift into other genres. Many of my first books were romantic suspense, so it's not like it was a huge leap for me to go over to mystery. Even the books I'm writing now, the mystery series, it has a dash of romance because, like I said, I love love. I like people falling in love and the idea that it really can be forever. They're lighthearted mysteries with a dash of romance.
Readers always want to know how authors come up with their ideas. And I never have a good answer because it's such a random process.
Yeah.
But do you have a concrete idea of how you do?
With the first series, with the Throwaways, it was usually a dream. And I would wake up and I'd be like, "Oh, that's a new book. with my women's fiction series that I mentioned, that pulled very heavily from my own life. For Nora Jones, which is my mystery series and kind of my obsession right now, I don't know where that one came from. I really don't. I knew I wanted a mystery and I just kind of kept puzzling through, well, who is she? What happened? And I couldn't begin to tell you how that fell into place. Once it did, and I picked the first title, Body in the Books, I knew then that I wanted to carry out that pattern for the rest of the series. So I would start thinking, okay, well, what crime words begin with this? And so the stories sprang from the titles. We came up with the titles, just my kids and I sitting around brainstorming, having fun with it. And then from that, I was like, oh, here's the story. And I've had a lot of fun with that series.
Was there ever a moment in your writing journey where you thought, I know what I'm doing now. I've got this? Or do you find that this is learning and growing is ongoing for you?
That moment is usually followed by, I have no clue what I'm doing. I think my confidence as a writer has grown immensely. Those first novels, they've been through a lot of editing over the decade and they've come a long way, but I read them and I love them and they're dear to my heart, but they're not as good as what I'm writing now. I do think I've gotten to a place as a writer that by the time I'm done with it, it's pretty clean and I know what I'm doing and I know what I need to do and what story arcs need to happen and what all I need to fit in and that kind of thing. So I've definitely grown, but there's always more growing to do. Or I'll read somebody else's work and I'm like, oh, I wish I thought of that. That's so good.
So along those lines, do you ever have doubts about a book, either before, during, or after release?
All of the above. No, honestly, before I write the book, I'm super excited about it. When I first get started, I love this book. It's the honeymoon period. And then you get into that murky middle where you're like, you have to actually make the mechanics of it all work. And it's not as fun anymore. I mean, I start to question then, like, was this just a really dumb idea? And then I power through and I get to the end and I love it again. And then as soon as I hand it over to my editor, there's that moment of, oh, it's horrible. She's going to hate it. Then I get it back and it's wonderful and hunky-dory. And then I hand it over. So basically every time it goes to someone new, I have a mild panic attack, even with release. I mean, this next one will be my 17th novel, I think. And I still have that momentary panic, like this is going to be the one my readers hate. And then it's fine. And then I move on. Like I'll start to question it later if it has a bad month or something like that. But I'm usually too busy with questioning the next one to spend too much time worrying about it.
So what part of writing fiction is the hardest for you and what do you find to be the easiest?
It's a hard question. The murky middle, as I just mentioned, that's always been really hard for me. That kind of slogging through the middle ground has been tough. Coming up with ideas is super easy. I have way more ideas than I'll ever be able to write. It's hard for me sometimes to step out of myself, if that makes sense. Like it's to not, I have to be very cognizant this many books in, as you both well know, to not just keep making the same jokes or saying the same thing or using the same voice. So that's always a challenge to me. With these mysteries, puzzling through the mystery has definitely been stretching my brain. It's good, but it's figuring out what that actual mystery is and who done it and how to parse out those things. Like sometimes I'll spend days just researching Spanish secret societies just for one little paragraph in a book. But the research is also the easiest. It's the fun part.
At what point do you share a work in progress? And who are your first readers?
I don't share it until it's pretty well done. I learned early on as a young writer that once I started sharing things, other people's feedback would steer the story. Or if it wasn't good feedback, it could just totally stop me and shut me down. And what I needed to do was get the words out and then fix it. I've gotten to where I don't really share it until it's done. The exception would be, I think it was Body in the Books, one of the Nora Jones. I was just kind of stuck, so I shared it with my editor early and said, just tell me what you think so far. And got feedback, and that kind of spurred me on. But for the most part, I wait until I'm completely done. And then my editor is usually one of the first people to see it. Sometimes, like with Trouble in the Treasure, there were a lot of pirates in that one and pirate lore and that kind of thing. And my oldest son is really well versed in pirate lore and knows what he's talking about. So I asked him to be the first one to read it so that he could catch any inconsistencies and kind of help me make sure I was accurate on some of that. But for the most part, it's my editor's the first human to see it.
Now, you mentioned you have no shortage of story ideas. Do you jot them down somewhere? Do you have a list?
I have an entire folder on my computer that it's like as soon as I have an idea, I type up everything I can think of about that idea and I save the document and I put it in that folder so that when it's time to figure out what's next, I can bring it out.
Do you have any writing advice for someone who's just starting out?
Right? Do it. I can't tell you how many people tell me they want to be a writer or they're going to write a book someday and then they don't dedicate the time to it. It's like anything. The more you do it, the better you'll be. It is not going to just manifest itself into existence. You have to actually sit down and put your hands on the keyboard and write, or use something like Otter AI. That's what I do. If I'm completely stumped, I will transcribe and I'll just babble, and then at least get something on a page. But you have to actually write. The other thing is to grow a thick skin, and it's a very fine art of learning what feedback to take and what feedback to set aside. For example, when I first shared Tumbleweed, which is one of the first ones I wrote, but it was the sixth one released. When I shared it with one of my critique partners, she was not nice. She did not like that book. And it hurt, it cut. But once I got over feeling sorry for myself and I paid attention to what she was saying, she was right. It took me too long to get to the story. It was dragging. It was boring. So I took that feedback and I made the story better. And it's a much stronger story for that. So sometimes, even if it hurts, you have to take the feedback. But again, the president of that literary company, it's like her advice was solid. She's right. I would have had a stronger career if I had said, here are the parameters of the genre I want to write in and done that. But it wouldn't have been the career the career I had is the one I wanted because it's led me on this amazing journey. And I've been involved with such amazing people and organizations because of those stories I told that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So you kind of have to sift through all the different feedback you get and learn what to take and what to set aside and say, well, it might have merit, but it's not for me.
Now, you mentioned Otter AI. Is that dictation software?
It is. It's a dictation software and it's free for the first 600 minutes, but even as chatty as I am, I don't go over my 600 minutes a month. And it dictates everything you say, and then you upload it to the Google Drive. So if I'm stuck, if I'm really, truly writer's block stuck, I'll just talk my way through a chapter, and then I at least have something to edit.
I'm curious about the mysteries. Has it changed your process from when you wrote the romances?
Absolutely has. I was a dedicated pantser. Everybody's either a plotter or a pantser. They fly by the seat of their pants. I flew by the seat of my pants. I would just write and just, whatever came out, came out. I cannot do that with the mysteries. I have to have some sort of an outline where I sit down and I say, okay, I know I need it to be this many chapters. This needs to happen in the first 3 chapters. This needs to happen in the last 2 chapters. Now let's fill in the blanks in between. And then I've gotten much better about keeping track of, I keep a running list of, okay, here's what's going on with the main mystery line. And here are all those subplots that are going on to make sure that I'm circling back to the subplots more, periodically throughout. And so I am much more organized with the mysteries than I ever was with my romances.
And does it make it less fun, or does it make you feel more secure?
It keeps me going. It keeps me moving forward because these mysteries are, again, they're a little weird because it's me. So it's like the first in the series was a proper whodunit, Body in the Book. She inherits a dusty old bookshop from her estranged uncle that she never knew and moves to Florida to, set things right and realizes he was murdered. And so goes to solve the mystery of who killed him. But then the second one it's like there's a huge treasure hunt. So it's not a typical cozy. She finds an old treasure map in his things and goes on this grand adventure. The third one in the series, one of her close friends finds a live alligator in her art gallery, and so she's trying to solve that mystery. So there's still a lot of fun. The characters are a lot of fun. I've just really enjoyed this little group of people that I've brought together. I kind of jokingly call it Scooby-Doo for grown-ups, because there are each of these different character types. For example, the artist that I mentioned from the third one, she's got chromophagia. And so when she hears things, she sees a visual display. It's an actual neuro disorder, but it's like that's just an unusual thing you don't often see or hear. And so she'll be having a conversation. She's like, I just can't take that person's yellow today. So yeah, I still have a lot of fun with it, even though it's more organized.
Do you have an ideal reader in mind when you write? Stephen King writes for his wife, for example. Do you have anyone like that?
Would it sound really narcissistic to say myself?
No, we hear that answer almost 100% of the time, right, Karen?
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe that just says something about writers. I don't know. No, for a large part, I'm writing the books I want to read. I'll go back and I'll reread the throwaways, and I'm still giggling. It's like 10 years later, I'm still like, I amuse myself, if nothing else. But at this point, I have some of my people in my in my reader group, like I can think of about 7 of them off the top of my head. They've been with me since day one. They have followed me through all of these books and all of the ups and downs of my own life and everything. And they get my books. They'll be going through some sort of like life trial, and they'll reread my books because they're comfort to them. And so I think of them when I write each new book. It's like, are they going to like it? Because they get it. They get what I'm trying to do with my books. And so as long as they like it, I'm good.
Is there a book that you'd love to write, but you haven't yet?
Yes. There's one I'm dying to get to, but it's probably going to be later in the year or next year before I'm able to get around to it, just because I realized I was being overly ambitious in what I was going to try and get written in the next year. So I had to dial it back a little bit. But one of the secondary characters that came up in Trouble and the Treasure from my Nora Jones mystery, she is a 40-something empty nester who went back to school and got her degree in archaeology, like her grad work in archaeology. And so she's going to become like a female Indiana Jones and get her own series. And I cannot wait for that to happen for her. But it's not time yet. I have some other books to write first.
That sounds really, really fun. So what do you think you would be doing if you were not an author?
Oh, probably making myself and everyone around me crazy. I always wanted to be a singer. I'd love to sing. I actually did an open mic night once about 3 years ago, which was, I know it was terrifying, but a dream come true to actually sing in front of a crowd. But yeah, so I guess I could see myself being a singer-songwriter, but it's shocking how similar that process is. I have a friend who's a singer-songwriter, and we talk about our world, and it's kind of funny how similar it is to writing. So I don't know if that's too big of a difference. But
Now, I talk to other author friends, and almost everybody has at least one manuscript in their hard drive that they started and abandoned. Do you have anything like that?
yeah, I have one, and I really want to get it done. I love this book. I am so excited about this book, but it's just sitting there unfinished because I've never been very good about sticking to one genre or writing to the genre, like actually obeying all the rules of the genre. But this one's a fantasy series, which is a bit of a stretch even for me. And so it's like, it just, there's so many books I need to be writing to keep the series that I have going, propelling forward. That actually have a readership and have an audience, that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to invest too much time on something that I would have to, quite honestly, put a pen name out there and build a whole new audience for. So it's just sitting there ignored right now, but eventually I'll get to it.
How consumed are you with the story when you're in the middle of writing a book?
Fairly consumed. More so with some than others. Gosh, when I was writing Throwaway, there were times that like a scene would just keep playing over and over and over in my mind until I wrote it down. And some of them were kind of disturbing scenes. I'm like, I need to get this written because I can't watch this person get shot one more time because it would just keep playing in my head. So sometimes I'm a little more obsessive than others, but I am pretty immersed in that world. And even if I'm not actively writing, I'm puzzling through something. I'm thinking about something. I'm thinking about those characters. It does pretty much shape my world for the time that I'm writing it.
Who has been your biggest supporter as you built your craft and career?
My kids, without a doubt. I have 3 sons. 2 are grown and 1 is so close. And he acts grown, but he's still got a couple more months left with me. But they are my biggest cheerleaders. They are so proud of me. They're like, the other day I was discouraged about something. I was like, oh, these numbers just aren't what I was hoping for and blah, blah, blah. And my middle son is like, hey, from where I sit, it's nothing but forward motion. Think about how far you've come from this time last year and how far they're amazing. I love them so much. And then second to that would be my oldest sister. She, I think for a lot of years, she was like, oh, that's cute. You're a writer. And then in this last year or two, she started to really engage with the books and realize how important this was to me. And she's been an amazing cheerleader, and she cracks me up because she'll send out a text to the entire family and be like, Heather has a new book today. You need to all go get it. So
that is a good sibling for sure.
No kidding. Do your sons, do they read your books?
They do. Knowing that my kids will read all of my books is part of why you'll never see me write anything too terribly steamy, because I still have to look them in the eye. They're not necessarily, 2 of them are avid readers, 1 not so much, but they will read my books. And now that, my oldest 2 are in pretty serious, my oldest is engaged, and my second son is in a serious relationship. I know their significant others read the books too and are really supportive. So that's nice.
Do you have a why when it comes to your fiction? What are you hoping readers will take from your books?
The recurring theme through all of them, there are a few of them actually. One is hope. There is always hope. If you are still breathing, there is hope for you and hope for your life. That's important to me, that my readers walk away with that. I know my own life, I have reinvented myself so many times because I'm just like, nope, that's not happening the way I wanted to. And rather than give up, what do I need to change and make that difference? So you see a lot of my characters moving across country or completely changing careers or doing some massive upheaval, which I know is, to an extent, all fiction is that pivotal moment and what happens from there. But it's really prominent in my books. There's also, we all have a mark to leave on this world. None of us are insignificant. We all have something we can do to make the world a better place just by being in it. And I like to encourage my readers to figure out what that mark is and to understand it doesn't have to be something big. It doesn't have to be some crazy, weird thing. It could just be that you're really nice to the people around you, or that you're encouraging, or that whatever. So I try to highlight that. And especially with the books I'm writing right now, my biggest thing is just, I'm trying to create an escape for people, a happy place to be. That's a big part of the shift that I've been doing with Nora Jones and my Lakeport series. They're just happy little escapes, and it's all about friendships and the families that we choose and the people that we choose to have in our life and how important that is. And just love and laughter and remembering that there is still goodness out there, because I think so many people are so tired and so worn down that we just need to escape for a little bit.
So can you tell us what you're working on right now?
I have trying to get the finishing touches on Gator in the Gallery, because that's book 3 for Nora Jones. It launches on January 4th, and I'm a wee bit panicked over getting that one just right where I want it to be. Then I've got, I'm also working on my second installment for my Lakeport romance series, California Skies. That's coming out in March. And I'm also working on Everyday Magic, which is it's the follow-up to my Elusive Magic, the women's fiction that came out last year. That's one of those, I'm writing that just for me, but there was more to the story and a couple of readers asked for more. So I'm trying to get that one ready. That comes out in April.
So you can work on more than one book at a time?
Yeah, I'm generally like my main focus is on one book, but in the background it's like having multiple tabs open. And so in the background, I'll be kind of thinking about things, and as they come to me, I jot it down. So I usually have one that I'm editing, one that I'm actively writing, and one that's percolating, and that I'm just like, as things come to me, I'm getting it jotted down and that sort of thing. So
I'm envious of that. I seem to only be able to focus on one thing at a time.
I'm not saying I'm doing it very well, but
Well, now we've come to the part of the podcast where we ask our fun extra questions. So I'm going to throw them at you and just say whatever comes to mind.
okay.
The first question, what is one food that will never get past your lips?
Tuna fish, like the canned tuna. Nope.
Who would you want to play you in a movie?
I have no idea. I'm afraid to even venture a guess on that one.
So we're just going to say we're open to any casting decision that's made.
Right.
Or Karen and I can discuss it later and come up with somebody.
Are we going like, who I would like to play me in my movie, or who's more realistic to play me in? Moving on.
Moving on. What superpower would you pick given the opportunity?
I'd like to be able to fly. I think that would be very convenient.
That's a good one. What's your biggest guilty pleasure?
Life is hard enough to feel any guilt about anything that brings me pleasure. So I don't think I have one. I am unabashedly a dork. So
That's the best way to be. What is the worst job you've ever had?
I probably shouldn't say.
Oh, please do. Please do. We want to hear.
No, it's not that exciting. I feel like I've had some that are wonderful and horrible at the same time. I don't know if I could pick just one out. I did have a job. It was fun, but I also went like 9 months without a day off. So that was probably the worst, because Monday through Friday, I was expected to be in office. And then on the weekends, I would run their events for them. And so it was 7 days a week for like 9 months solid before I was finally able to get a day off. And that was not fun.
7 days a week sounds grueling to me.
It really kind of was. And I had a corporate job that shall remain nameless. It was not my favorite. Just the atmosphere was not the best. It makes me very happy to be doing what I'm doing now.
Well, I have a better question then. If you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be?
Not procrastinating. Speaking deadlines, is that a good
Sign me up for that one.
That's hard though, because I really love the process of learning new things. I know I mentioned that before, but it's like I'm the kind of person and Tess has known me long enough to know, I've gone through some pretty big shifts in my life. There for a while, my kids and I really were interested in homesteading. So we lived in the middle of nowhere. We raised all our own food, and we raised goats and alpacas. But the process of learning how to do that and figuring it all out was so fun. And then when it was time, we sold the farm and we moved on, and now we're doing something else. And it's like, I really love learning new things. So I don't know if I would want to be an instant expert at anything.
The challenge.
Right.
What is your favorite scent or smell?
I love citrus smells, or like orange and vanilla together.
What is the most terrifying thing you've ever done?
When I was 11, I jumped off Dead Man's Bluff, much to my parents' chagrin. So we used to go to the lake as a kid, when I was a kid, and one year the lake levels were really high, and so there was this bluff called Dead Man's Bluff that all the teenagers were jumping off of and into the water, and I was like, oh, I got to do that. And so I finally nagged my mother into letting me try. And so some of the older guys, one of whom I was deeply in love with, I will have you know, had gone first. And so they were going to wait at the bottom so I could jump. So I jump, and I remember about midway through going, I really feel like I should have hit by now. Is water going to go up my nose? So I plugged my nose. And when I plugged my nose, it threw me off balance. And so I landed sitting. Which is on concrete, basically, because that water was so hard. I had bruises from my tailbone all the way down to my feet. And that's not the worst part, because when I went down, I lost my two-piece.
Oh, no.
So Andrew, who was waiting at the bottom for me, is trying to pull me up because he's like, oh, dear Lord, she's killed herself. And he's trying to pull me up. And I'm fighting like anything to stay down because I want to catch my swimsuit before it sinks. I've not jumped off any cliffs since then. Second only to that would be the time I did the open mic night. That was pretty terrifying, but it was much less exciting than that.
So what's one thing you're really bad at?
Well, meeting deadlines. So bad. What else am I really, really bad at? Not burning things. I like to cook. Well, no, I used to like to cook. I'm realizing now I don't so much. And I have a couple of things I'm good at cooking, but the rest, not so much because I get distracted and so I burn a lot.
If you could live your life over again, would you want to?
There's still so much to do. I mean, there's still so much ahead. And I don't know that I know. There's some parts I definitely don't want to re-experience, but I have no regrets. I figure it's all just one big learning experience. So I have many moments where I'm like, oh, that didn't work out as planned. Let's try something different.
Yeah, I kind of think if you could fast forward over the difficult parts.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
That would be ideal.
Yeah, if I could go back in time and like hold my babies when they were real snuggly, when they're brand new and they curl up into themselves still and their little bums. Oh, if I could hold them like that again, sure, I'd go back and do that.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few other moments, not so much.
Well, this has been so much fun. I didn't mention in the intro, but Heather and I have known each other for a long time. We were together with the same publisher that she spoke of earlier. So it was so fun to hear you answer our questions. And I learned some new things about you after all this time.
Oh, good. Thank you so
thanks
much
for taking the time. Yeah, and good luck with all your new endeavors. I know your mystery books are really taking off, and I'm really excited for you. So good luck with everything, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Wonderful. Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to Behind the Book, brought to you by authors Tess Thompson and Karen McQuestion. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and post a question in the comment section. This has been Behind the Book.